Hello friends, backend API development is one of the very strong requirement in today's job market, as you all know. However, backend API alone will not suffice. Today, considering the cloud is putting its footprints in across all the areas, so backend API development using Azure is one of the most demanding requirement in today's job market. So are you ready to drive how it works? Let us explore how the Azure and backend API works together. There are primarily five areas where backend API development can be accelerated using Azure component. Number one, Azure App Service. Azure App Service is a fully managed, highly scalable platforms managed by cloud for web development, API development, mobile backend development, and many more. So it is a complete serverless, fully managed infrastructure given by Azure for backend API development. Backend API development easily can be developed and deploy your endpoint into Azure App Services, and you don't have to think about the infrastructure that is required for you. Your job as a backend developer just to develop the API and develop those endpoints into the Azure App Services, and thereby your app endpoint will be ready to integrate with the front end, to integrate with the other external and internal applications. So Azure App Service is one of the very much easy, at the same time highly scalable and uh, a secure environment to give you the flexibility that you as a developer can focus only the work that you are expert enough rather than focusing on another deployment and infrastructure component that is required at the same time to make a production ready API. So Azure App Service is one of the very important component for your API development. Second, Azure SQL Database. Without knowing the database, nothing will happen. As I said earlier, front end and back end application. Back end is nothing but API, at the same time some storage. So that storage will be or can be developed by using Azure SQL Database, which is again a serverless managed managed services by Azure for your overall storage requirement. When I say storage, it's primarily the relational database. So Azure SQL Database is again a highly compatible serverless auto scale capability, and also it is compatible with the SQL Server engines and Postgres SQL. What it means, if you have already developed some of the SQLs in SQL Server or Postgres database, you are good to go. You don't have to worry much. So Azure SQL Database is another very important component for backend API developer, because you will store some information as part of the API development, isn't it? For example, you develop e-commerce applications, so all the product catalog has to be stored into the relational database. User profile has to be stored into that database, and many more. So Azure SQL Database is another important component for your backend API development, along with Azure App Services that I talked earlier. That is second component is Azure SQL Database. Third, which is very important for backend API developer, is Azure DevOps. Again, managed service by Azure, which includes three tools. One, code repository, where essentially you put the code into a centralized place. Second, CI/CD pipeline, and third, agile dashboard and collaboration tools. So Azure DevOps includes three tools, which is for code repository, CI/CD pipelines, and also agile dashboard for collaborations. So this tool helps you as a backend developer to check in your code in the code repository, and thereby again you can pull the code and build a CI/CD pipeline to deploy your backend API into the Azure App Services that I talked earlier. So thereby your overall development becomes faster and error-free. So Azure DevOps, which is one of the major component you as a backend developer to know. Fourth one is basically Azure Container Services, which we largely call AKS. Azure Kubernetes clusters. So Azure Kubernetes services is very important because nowadays most of the backend APIs we developed using container service. So container is nothing but a small VM machines where your all the libraries, your all the Java class or Python classes and any other dependency will be packaged in a small VM machines, and so that there will be no dependencies from one computer to another computer. You just push your container into the respective server and it will start working. So that containerized application development is in a full swing today. You might have already heard about Docker. So Azure AKS, Azure Kubernetes class services, which essentially help you to containerize your applications. When your applications are big enough, there is a lot of cluster of containers are required. Lot of coordinations among the containers are required. Orchestration is required. Monitoring is required. Infrastructure has to be created to make sure that your high-end, high-speed and API can be scalable without breaking in between. So the Azure containers Kubernetes cluster will help you to make sure that your backend API is scalable enough as per the load increases. It is secure enough. At the same time, it will reduce your effort to create the infrastructures that is required to full and high-end enterprise applications. So Azure Container Service is again a highly manageable, secure, scalable orchestration, monitoring, and containerized application deployment path. So that is 4. And 5, which is very important again, is Azure Blob Storage. So Azure Blob Storage will help you to store your unstructured data. That can be document, that can be image, that can be video files, that can be normal text files, and so on. So you as a backend API developer will not be able to develop the software without putting some data, initial data into Azure Blob Storage. So some of the input files, some of the output file has to be stored into some storage, which is nothing but Azure Blob Storage. It is very handy. It can be integrated with any other external internal applications. It can be highly secure enough using Azure Active Directory integrations over here, so that the right user can access the right files only, and many more. So therefore, Azure Blob Storage is another major component as a backend developer you must know. Last but not least is again Azure Active Directory, which will help you to secure your CI/CD pipeline, which will help you to secure your database, which will help you to secure your storage and entire software that you are going to use for your backend API development. So overall, these 5 and 6 areas that I have talked about, which is Azure App Services number 1, Azure SQL Database number 2, Azure Kubernetes Service number 3, Azure DevOps number 4, and Azure Blob Storage number 6, number 5, and Azure Active Directory also probably you can consider as a one of the component. And then all of this, if you know at a high level, some of the area and some depth, you must also learn. So if you know all this area, probably sooner or later you become a good backend API developer. Nothing is late. If you start learning it in whatever stage you are, it does not matter. Just start learning it, start developing it, and deploying your applications. Sooner or later you become an Azure expert with the API development experience. So with this note, this Nirpa Chhatri, see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning, keep growing. Bye-bye.